Desir is a stupid, pathetic, and punchable useless kid who lives in an orphanage because his parents magically disappeared. In short, they left him. But one day, Bridget, a magic teacher at the Hebrian Academy, visits the orphanage. Desir uses this chance to shyly ask her how to teach him magic because he thinks that he can somehow make his parents magically appear like in Now You See Me. Bridget thought he was acoustic and smiles, agreeing to teach him magic. She shows him how to cast a fire spell, but Desir is so stupid, he can't get it right. She then decides to get closer and guide his hands. With her help, Desir manages to cast the spell. Both start smiling at each other and Desir thinks he's got aura. But years later, Desir is all grown up and is about to attend the opening ceremony at Hebrian Academy. Bridget steps up to welcome the new students. Desir is shocked to see her. Two girls compliment Bridget's beauty, and she smiles, reminding them if they keep talking, they'll send them to Brazil. She announces that not all will be enrolled and that they must take a test, with only the top 600 passing. She explains that there are portals called Raid Shadow Worlds. These portals connected Earth with another parallel world filled with dangerous phenomena, and if they don't clear them, the world will end. The students are surprised, but Bridget explains that the test involves clearing a Raid Shadow World dungeon, which Desir repeats simultaneously in shock. The students worry, but Bridget reassures them that the Shadow World is artificial, and their seniors will help them prepare. She welcomes them to the entrance ceremony of the year 3613 and leaves. Desir walks away, feeling despair as he doesn't know where the toilet is, and he just let out the most devious, silent farts of all time. Desir decides to gather his thoughts outside when a girl approaches him. She's been looking for him because he wasn't at the meeting spot. Desir apologizes, and she introduces herself as Lidoria, a second-year student at the academy and his mentor for the test. She tells him it's okay to address her casually and that there are no toilets in the academy. Desir for some reason knows who she is, a genius mage skilled with fire magic and ranked first in the academy. Lidoria asks why he's staring at her, but he replies that he's just nervous, when in reality, the most unholy Mexican taco he's had last night is peeking through his nether windows. She tells him not to worry about the test, as it's just an artificial shadow world to see if they can fight. She checks her pad and is surprised to find Desir is broke, lactose intolerant, and an unemployed orphan. Desir smiles, saying that shouldn't matter in his enrollment. Lidoria agrees, but worries he will be placed in the beta class regardless of his score. Because he's not a Sigma male, Desir is aware of the Academy's discrimination, putting nobles in the Alpha class and broke people like him in Beta, while the rest of our viewers in the Sigma class. Lidoria takes him to a hall and encourages him to pass the test. She uses her ID card to open the door, and Desir joins the crowd of waiting students. He looks around until a girl behind him asks what he's looking for. When he turns, he's shocked to see that Nico Niai Girl's older sister from Love Live. Desir calls her name, but she asks how he knows it. He smiles, saying he saw it from Instagram comments. She says that means they're in the same testing group and wishes him luck before leaving. Minutes later, Lidoria briefs Desir on the test, telling him he's in Group D and that the test is a race across the Orensti Plains in the beginner level of the Shadow World. She assures him the test will be like Sword Art Online, explaining that if they receive any fatal damage, they will die in real life. But it's totally safe and easy, and they will definitely not get harmed or anything. Before Desir can ask what she means by damage, another senior, Elheim, interrupts, saying PvP is turned on and he can't wait to gank noobs in the tutorial area. With a cocky smirk, Elheim adds that it's impossible for the students to pass the test. Lidoria says that's a lie and they won't know unless they try. Elheim introduces his mentee, Azist, a magic knight. Desir recognizes her as her future Asuna, but she turns away, which doesn't surprise him since she doesn't talk to poor people. Lidoria fumes at Elheim, who laughs at her. She defends herself, saying having a magic knight mentee isn't proof of his skill. Elheim claims it's proof of his personal virtue and leaves with Azist. He tells Lidoria that having a broke-ass mentee is fitting for her level, which angers Lidoria. Lidoria tells Desir that, while the odds are against him because of the magic knight, he has the plot armor. Desir smiles, thanking her for her support.
Thanks, Lidoria.
An announcement is made that Group D's test is starting.
Participants, please make your way to the gate.
Desir reaches the gate, joining Azist, Romantica, and 3 nameless bozos who will probably die in the first area. He looks at Romantica and smiles before focusing ahead. As the gate opens, they all walk in, transporting them to an open field. The announcer states their goal is ahead, marked by a glowing light. She tells them only 3 will pass the test, and they can use magic attacks, interference, and other methods. If anyone receives fatal damage, they will be disqualified. She instructs them to assemble at the starting line, which they do. Désir looks at Azist with a side eye, knowing she will pass the test easily. Azist surprises him by calling his name. When he asks how she knows
do you
it,
know my
she
name?
says she checked the roster before the test. Azist roasts him by saying he's got no swag, he has negative riz, he's got 0 aura, and he will not survive the winter. Désir admits she's right,
right.
and Azist states she knows he's been observing her, but assures him she's not interested in attacking weaklings like him. Désir smiles and thanks her for her concern. The race across the plains starts. Azist takes off at great speed, leaving the others behind. The other participants follow, but not as fast, while Désir and Romantica are the last to start running. Romantica steps on this idiot with a hat while running and apologizes, gushing about how adorable it looked. Désir smiles, saying she likes those things. Romantica accuses him trying to riz her up, instead of trying to win the race. Désir agrees to focus on the race, but says at their pace, they'll be disqualified. She tells him not to lump them together or act so familiar. Désir smiles and apologizes, but Romantica gets angry, telling him to stop smiling or she's gonna call Dr. Disrespect on him. Désir says he can't help it because she's cute. Suddenly Désir spots a light in the trees and pushes Romantica out of the way as a fireball passes between them. A participant had shot the fireball and fires a fire spear at Désir, but Romantica counters with a wind ball. The collision creates smoke, but her wind ball flies through and hits the attacker, causing him to suffer a violent off-screen death like Gojo. Now, only 5 participants remain in the test. Romantica tells Désir she owes him for saving her life and thanks him but says that settles the score between them. Désir agrees and smiles, which annoys her. Désir chuckles and asks if she doesn't need to catch up with the others. She says it's no big deal and that she was hiding her trump card. Then, she casts a huge wind spell toward the forest. Meanwhile, in the Shadow World system room, Joe Biden and the professors observe the tests, noting that everything is running smoothly. One professor comment on the excellent candidates, particularly the Magic Knight among them, saying it's fitting for the noble class. They laugh at broke people like Désir among Group D, mocking that he doesn't stand a chance if he's just standing there instead of actually running. Bridget watches Désir with a worried expression. 2 other participants are running behind Azist, who is very fast. One is angry but can't complain since she's a Magic Knight. He notices that if he keeps up his speed, he will pass. Suddenly, the most insane Taco Bell fart magic blows one contestant away, while the other uses his sword to anchor himself, boasting that no amount of laxative taco farts can stop him. But he's shocked to see Azist cutting through the wind with her sword, continuing ahead. He tries to do the same, but a strong gust uproots a tree, slamming him with massive environmental damage, leading to him getting sent to the Shadow Realm. Now, only 3 remain. Romantica is happy her power took down 2 participants and tells Désir they can both pass now. However, she changes her expression, saying it won't be so easy because he's next. She tells him to back down while he can still smile. Désir smiles and asks why. She says his smiling face pisses her, everyone, including me, off, so she's gonna have to kill him. She readies a magic circle, telling him to drop out if he understands, but Désir refuses. Romantica thinks she heard him agree, but realizes he refused. She asks if he's stupid and why he refuses after seeing her powers. She yells at him to stop smiling and start throwing hands like a real man, unleashing a series of magic circles aimed at him. Désir is shocked as she releases multiple wind strikes, and they all hit him. Romantica smiles,
Bye-bye.
bidding Désir farewell and walking away. But as the smoke clears, she is shocked to see Désir
impressed.
still standing. He compliments her on handling so many magic circles at once. He tells her she is as good as he expected, but could improve if she focuses less on speed and more on control, noting that a slight trajectory change would have made her miss. Romantica is angry and yells at him for spitting nerd stuff on her, insisting she missed by mistake and there's no way he can defeat her. She unleashes more magic circles, firing wind chains at him. Désir activates his G-Yaz and deflects the wind chains, explaining that altering the wind changes the trajectory. Romantica is stunned that Désir can use inverse magic, a skill that's usually from the Sigma male class, which broke people like Désir can't access. She yells that it's impossible, given he's of the lowest circle. She fires a large wind chain, but Désir was like, nah, I'd inverse, inversing and shattering her power. Romantica realizes he might be more skilled than her. Desir suggests they wrap things up as he walks towards her, mentioning he has others to defeat. Romantica stumbles back in fear after realizing that Desir isn't a beta male, but a true Sigma male after all. But she unleashes the gates of Babylon thinking she's built like Gilgamesh. She starts shooting wind balls, but Desir unleashes 120% of his potential. He knows Romantica is strong, one of the strongest new students, but not strong enough. Desir casts a Control-Z magic, shattering the remaining wind balls and undoing all her magic circles. Romantica is exhausted. Desir tells her she overlooked that inversing spells is not all he can do. He casts a grease spell on himself, a basic spell that reduces friction. Romantica asks what he's going to do with it.
But why?
Desir tells her he's going to get to that finish line full of swag and infinite aura. Desir casts a fire magic circle behind him. Romantica thinks he's insane, believing he'll hurt himself. Desir doesn't answer and casts a fireball, propelling himself like he's the GOAT to do, hitting a black flash on Mojito and knocking Romantica down as he passes her. Romantica lays on the ground as she realizes she ain't familiar with Desir's game and he's not capping. Azist has passed the forest and is heading towards the finish line, but senses someone behind her. Desir emerges from the forest, gliding through the grass thanks to the grease spell. Azist realizes that at this rate, he will catch up to her, so she stops running and faces him. She admits she underestimated him and will take back calling him weak, but will fight him with everything she has. She unleashes her very own gates of Babylon and prepares for attack. Desir stops gliding as he sees this and uses his G-Yaz again to deactivate Azist's noble phantasm. Azist notices this, but still shoots at him with the ones he hasn't inversed yet. Desir changes the trajectory of the ice bullets as they reach him, causing them to hit the ground around him. However, he is still hit by some. Azist is satisfied but frowns as she sees him emerge from the attack with an injured arm. She guesses he defeated Romantica with his inversing spell. Desir stands ready to fight with his own magic circles. Azist decides not to let him inverse her spell, so she merges all her magic circles into one huge circle and casts a long dong ice spear aimed to peg him. Desir hits her spear with his magic that makes the thingy smaller, then inverses the spell, adjusting the trajectory of the magic to hit the ground behind him, causing an explosion. Using the blowback and grease, he glides with great speed past Azist, who's ready to draw her sword. He tells her she's too focused on defeating him and forgetting the goal. He crosses the finish line, ending the test and coming in first place. Azist admits defeat and begins walking towards the goal, while Romantica showing off her double-barreled bazookas for absolutely no reason. After the test, the professors assign the students to their classes and laugh because, as usual, no commoners made it to the Alpha class. One mocks that the Alpha class is for talented noble mages, not uneducated commoners. Another professor says the commoners should be grateful they get to enroll in Hebrian Academy, which makes all the professors laugh. Joe Biden calls them to order by banging his gavel. He announces a recommendation that a student be placed in the Alpha class, which came from Bridget. She stands up and recommends Desir be placed in the Alpha class. The results for the test are posted, and the students view them. Some celebrate making it to the Alpha class. Unfortunately, Desir is still in the Beta class, and Romantica is shocked to see her name on the list of the Beta class. In the classroom of the Beta class, Romantica is visibly disgusted by the old building and its depressing interior. The teacher draws a triangle on the board, explaining that mages are grouped by circles, with the lowest being 1 and the highest 7. He notes they're all in Circle 1, which isn't good enough for the Shadow World. Romantica disagrees silently because she's in Circle 2, while the teacher laughs at them, calling them a bunch of pathetic losers. This angers Romantica. She questions why she wasn't chosen for the Alpha class despite her status, especially annoyed to be sitting beside Desir, who shouldn't be there after beating Azist. Desir turns to her with a smile, further infuriating her as she slams the table. The teacher, scared, asks what's wrong, but Romantica brushes it off as nothing, laughing nervously. Desir recalls a meeting with Professor Bridget. He thanks her for her help at the orphanage, and she praises him for becoming old enough to marry her. Bridget reveals she wanted him in the Alpha class, but other noble professors objected. Desir realizes the school's obsession with status means many talented students in the Beta class might be overlooked due to discrimination. Romantica is alone in a large hall, still upset about being in the Beta class. A student named Donta approaches her, asking if she's Baron Iru's daughter. Romantica confirms this and asks who he is. Donta introduces himself as a student in the Alpha class and sits down, explaining he's recruiting members for his party, aiming to join Blue Moon, the best party in the academy. He invites her to join, citing her skill and lineage. Romantica sees the opportunity to reach the Alpha class, but hesitates when Donta asks her to go out with him in exchange for his recommendation. Romantica is shocked, telling him he's moving too fast since they've just met. Donta admits he's just built different because he can finish in less than 10 seconds. Donta insists it's wrong for a noble like her to be with filthy broke people in beta class. She asks for time to think when she doesn't even do that in the slight, and he agrees, presenting her with a Kemuvin, an artifact from his hometown, a customary gift given to a lover. Romantica opens it, finding the most foul brand of sacrifice necklace from Berserk. Donta urges her to accept it as he's no Griffith and the brand isn't even the same, before leaving to wait for her answer. Romantica is startled when Desir appears behind her, causing her to fall. She scolds him for sneaking up on her. She asks what he wants. He surprises her by proposing she join his party, but she proudly rejects him, citing the allure of joining Blue Moon, the top Alpha party, versus starting anew with someone from Beta class. Desir understands her decision but leaves a letter on the table, urging her to read it alone. Romantica takes it, mocking that it must be an embarrassing love letter. Desir whispers to her ear to discard it after reading, unsettling her before he departs, awaiting her response. Romantica looks around before reading the letter, which infuriates her because she can't read it due to the small font size. Meanwhile, Desir walks through the corridors, pondering Romantica's likely reaction after reading the letter. He's confident she will be mad. He spots the most beautiful femboy seated by himself on a bench, and I'm pretty sure that's a woman. A butterfly is flying around this femboy, which makes Desir happy because he's into that, and this boy's name is Pram. Desir follows Pram to an arena to observe his sword practice. Romantica joins him and is about to demand answers about the letter when Desir tells her, "Silence, woman, a femboy is talking." A sword practice is about to begin as Pram goes to select a large sword. Romantica is taken with his cute demeanor, even exclaiming she wants to peg him every night, acting like the least insane JJK fangirl on Twitter. The match starts, and Desir wonders why Pram chose such a long sword and not his long sword. The duel begins as Pram charges at his opponent, Percival, swinging his sword without hesitation. Percival, a noble, struggles to block Pram's attacks, growing increasingly annoyed while Pram becomes short of breath. Romantica comments on Pram's strength, but Desir notices that Pram is swinging the large sword blindly. As Percival starts to counterattack, Pram tries his best to block, but Desir becomes worried as Pram's attacks lack precision. When Pram goes in for an attack, Percival easily dodges and disarms him. Pram concedes defeat, and Percival is declared the winner, though he remains unsatisfied. Romantica remarks on the match, noting that the large sword didn't work well for Pram. Desir senses trouble as Percival approaches Pram with a knuckle sandwich. Desir jumps into the arena to stop the fight, but Percival continues to assault Pram. Desir rushes to Pram's aid as Percival kicks him. Desir holds Pram back, telling Percival that the match is already over, but Percival angrily tells him to shut up. When Desir suggests Percival might be jealous or hurt by Pram's talent, Percival lashes out, swinging his sword at Desir. In a surprising turn, Desir blocks the sword with his hand, breaking it. Percival is shocked, and Desir glares at him, telling him that nobody touches his beautiful femboy girlfriend without getting castrated. Percival hisses and walks away, wanting to keep his Percy balls intact, warning Desir that he won't forget this. Later, Pram helps Desir treat his injured arm, expressing concern. Desir reassures him that he used magic to minimize the damage. Romantica joins them, scolding Desir for his recklessness. Pram finishes bandaging Desir's arm, apologizing for causing the injury. Desir insists it's not Pram's fault and he can just give him head as thanks. Pram nearly tears up, feeling guilty that Desir now has an injured hand because of him, but Desir brushes it off, saying he doesn't mind so long as Pram's is unhurt. Pram starts to smile, introducing himself warmly. Romantica jumps in, grinning widely like every rotten Fujoshis on Twitter. After their introduction, Pram bids farewell to them and leaves. Desir asks Romantica what she wants to say, and she frowns as she remembers why she was looking for him in the first place. He suggests they find a quieter spot to talk. Romantica demands to know if he's told anyone about what he wrote in the letter. Desir assures her he hasn't, but explains that the professors already know her family secret. which is why she's in the lower class despite her strong magic skills. The letter reveals that Romantica's family were filthy rich at some point, up until his father discovered Zenless Zone Zero and started pulling for Ellen Jo and Grace Howard. Desir tells her the professors believe that even though their family has S-rank agents in their party, she's still a free-to-play bozo, and that's why they don't accept her as a real whale. Romantica admits she already knew this was the reason she was put in the beta class. Desir tells her she shouldn't join the Blue Moon group like she planned, because Donta will treat her badly if he finds out she's really a free-to-play gamer. Desir tells her she's welcome to join his party. Romantica asks if he's threatening to tell everyone her secret if she doesn't join his party, but Desir promises he won't do that. He says if she doesn't want to, he will just start the party with the most beautiful femboy in their school. Romantica imagines how cute it would be to see Pram every day, and if she could get him pregnant. Romantica thinks about it and tells Desir that he is really mysterious and seems to know a lot about her. Not only that, but he's also skilled with magic and defeated Azist, even though he's a lower circle member. She says she will uncover his secret eventually and agrees to join his group, but warns him that his constant smiling annoys her. Desir agrees, still smiling, and they shake hands to seal the deal. However, in Desir's mind, the urgency to recruit Romantica and Pram comes from something that happened during the school's entrance ceremony. Upon entering the academy, he experiences that Attack on Titan Season 4 Eren memory flashback from his past life, recalling what would happen 3 years from now with the raid Shadow World. The Shadow World is a creeping black fog that will consume everything in its path. To combat this calamity, they entered the Shadow Worlds to conquer it. But their doom came when they faced the toughest Shadow World, which was ruled by the worst enemy of all, low-budget CGI. In the final showdown, only a few mages, including Desir, stood against Boromir. The dragons scoffed at their mortal efforts, but Desir declared he would end Boromir's reign of terror. When Boromir attacked with fireballs, Desir used his inverse spell to neutralize Boromir's fireball. Desir used his inverse spell to completely seal off Boromir's powers, which allowed his comrade, Rafalo, the Light Knight, a powerful brawler, and Azist wielding a magic sword, to defeat Boromir. Rafalo shielded them against Boromir Tail. The brawler smashed the ground, which made it unstable for Boromir. Then Azist, empowered by magic and her bootleg noble phantasm, which Zod, the great mage, cast on her, uses her Excalibur to end the dragon, causing a massive explosion that ended Boromir's threat once and for all. Desir and his surviving comrades celebrated their victory, relieved that they could finally leave the Shadow World. Or so they thought. It was already evening in the dungeon, and Desir's comrades were wondering why they hadn't been transported home yet. Desir reassured them, saying they should give it some time since they already cleared the dungeon. Zod felt remorseful because out of the 150 million people who fought Boromir, only 6 of them survived. I guess they didn't subscribe to our channel. Desir felt despair as he remembered his fallen comrades, including Romantica and that femboy Pram. He can't believe he lost a real one. The nun suggested they talk about something uplifting, but Zod said they can't lift her skirt and be happy that 150 million people died due to skill issue. The nun proposed they can only pray for the souls of the fallen. Desir urged everyone to calm down to prevent further arguments. The nun praised Rafalo for blocking Boromir's attack with his shield. Rafalo, however, credited Desir for his significant contributions to the fight. Zod was impressed by Desir's ability to inverse and seal Boromir's spells despite being a lower circle mage, and he expressed regret that Desir's talent was overlooked because he was a broke-ass mofo. He added that he would have supported Desir if he had been in the magic tower. Rafalo asked everyone about their plans if they returned home. The brawler planned to return his friends' keepsakes to their families and give them honorable burials. The nun intended to go back to the western region to care for the victims' families and build a memorial and temple for the fallen spirits. Zod emphasized the importance of preventing another raid Shadow World occurrence by telling them to get good. They all turned to Azist for her answer, but she remained silent as they hadn't unlocked her dialogue option yet. Rafalo then asked Desir if he planned to return to Hebrian Academy. Desir remembered Romantica's smiling face as she talked about her home by the sea, and her teary face the moment she died. It pained him, but he simply told Rafalo that he'd think about it. Suddenly, Boromir's eyes opened, and a strong wind blew past them. They became alert, wondering if Boromir was still alive. Zod explained that the power was coming from the dragon's heart. He mentioned that a dragon's heart didn't just pump blood, it stored and circulated vast amounts of mana. When the dragon died, the blood stopped flowing, and the mana, with nowhere left to go, would explode, which he forgot to tell everyone. The ground began to crack around them. Raffaello placed his shield in front of them and cast a protective barrier. He asked Zod why this wasn't mentioned before they killed Boromir. Zod replied that no one had experienced this before, as it was the first time humans had defeated a dragon. He added that they couldn't stop such power, even if they were in perfect condition. Dazir tried to invert the explosion, but his spell shattered. Zod told him it was useless, as they were facing a ball of pure Oppenheimer that was about to explode. He said they should all prepare for the end. Dazir refused to accept this as their end, as he can no longer watch YouTube while eating. He remembered all his comrades' faces and clung to the hope of not giving up. In that moment, he opened his eyes to find himself back on the first day of school. He's basically just delusional. These memories made Dazir determined to awaken as many talents as possible to avoid his comrades dying again. Among the many warriors who fought in the war, Pram was the fastest swordsman and the tightest femboy. Dazir believes that if Pram was that strong without proper training, he can make Pram even stronger now. Azist is a magic knight of the highest circle with ice magic and can wield vision magic, which is impossible to reverse. She is stronger than any knight when wielding a sword, especially when she does that saber BS straight out of Unlimited Blade Works. Dazir cries as he realizes they fought in vain, and he lost all his comrades for nothing. As he takes in his surroundings, he realizes it's all the same, and he's not dreaming. He literally loaded a save from the last checkpoint. Walking with Lidoria on that first day, Dazir saw this as his second chance to prevent tragedy from striking again, and he became determined in his heart to do a Steins Gate ending. Back in the present, Dazir takes Romantica and Pram to meet Professor Bridget. Romantica feels skeptical, but Dazir assures her it's fine. He knocks on the door, and Bridget invites them in with a smile. As they walk in, Dazir greets her and says he's come to apply to form a party. She serves them tea to make them feel comfortable and then gets serious. She wants to know why Dazir wants to form a party. Dazir replies that he plans to get promoted to the Alpha class by just being extremely OP. Bridget asks if he's aware of how difficult it is to win, and Dazir tells her, "Nah, I'd win." Pram asks if it's really that difficult to get promoted, and Bridget explains how the tournament works. She says the Academy holds a ranking tournament to determine the ranks of students in each grade. Both Alpha and Beta class members can participate, and they must have a party of 3 to 6 members. It's a battle between parties, and the winning party's rank goes up. Romantica says a party with more members has an advantage, but Bridget says that's not so. There's also individual assessment, which looks at how well one contributes and supports the success of their party members during the qualifying round. The winning parties then participate in the final round in the artificial Shadow World. Those who place in the top 9 are given the title of single rankers, and a single ranker can advance from Beta class to Alpha class. The ranking tournament is also called a promotional tournament, but no one has been promoted before because the professors hate poor people getting something. Romantica slams the table, saying it's obvious since the Alpha class always stays ahead of the Beta class. Bridget agrees, saying only Alpha class students have been in the top 9 in the past, making it seem impossible for Beta class students to get promoted. Yet Dazir says they just have to see for themselves. Romantica tries to argue, but Dazir says if Beta class members make it to the top 9, it will prove all the professors who think Beta class students are untalented wrong. Bridget comments that she's a professor too, but not like the others. She says if they win, they can trigger a change of the Academy's rotten system. Also, if Dazir wins, he marries her so she can finally get out of being single after 30 years. Dazir accepts because she loves MILFs and femboys. Then Bridget asks Romantica and Pram if they still want to join Dazir's party after hearing all this. They accept, and Dazir starts their training because she shoots like a gamer girl who only plays Stardew Valley. In the training room, Dazir draws a circle on the wall and tells Romantica that he will train her magic accuracy. Romantica defends that she's already good at it, demonstrating by casting multiple magic circles and aiming at the target. However, only 3 hit the circle. She's proud, but Dazir says she needs to make all of them hit the center. She wants to protest, but he tells her she needs accuracy to get into the Alpha class. He believes she can do it because the Romantica from his past could. He taunts her, saying if she can't do it, he'll be taking Pram as his male wife. Annoyed, Romantica asks what he wants her to do. He gives her a ball and asks her to move it to the circle on the other side of the room. She's about to throw it, but he tells her to use her Nen abilities, a wind magic, to transport the ball from one place to another. She sits on the floor, figuring out how to do it. Desir tells her not to worry and just use the basics of her wind magic, visualizing the wind and focusing. Romantica concentrates hard on the ball, visualizes the wind, and the ball starts to float. She releases her power, and the wind propels the ball, but it doesn't go far. Desir is amazed she figured it out and tells her to keep practicing. She agrees, blushing at his compliment. Desir then turns to Pram, who is eager to know what Desir wants to teach him. Desir says he can teach him how to Duji, but tells him he has nothing to teach him. Desir explains that Pram has already perfected his skill as a sword master and is strong enough to win the ranking tournament. But Pram feels sad and says that's not true. Desir knows Pram can be unstoppable if he unleashes his full potential. He remembers how Pram fought in the past with just a rapier. Desir asks why Pram chose a long sword the day he was fighting Percival from the Alpha class, even though a lighter weapon like a rapier suits his style better. Pram is shocked Desir knows about his fighting technique, but he doesn't want to explain it. Desir insists he needs to know because it affects the party's combat strategy. Pram agrees, but says Desir will have to follow him. Desir follows Pram, who asks about Romantica's training. Desir assures Pram that she will be fine and doesn't need to be interrupted. Pram stops and says that Desir really trusts Romantica. Desir replies that he trusts her the same way he trusts Pram, which shocks but pleases Pram. Inside Pram's room, Pram shows Desir his rapier. He explains that he didn't know his father, who was a noble, while his mother was a commoner. Pram was born out of wedlock, and the rapier is the only thing his father left behind, aside from her mother who has that specific hair braid. Desir is convinced this rapier is the same one Pram used in the past. When Pram hands it to him, Desir is amazed at how light it is. Pram says he started training with the sword at the age of 6, hoping to become a respectable son worthy of wielding it. However, on her deathbed, his mother made him promise never to visit his father, which he sadly accepted. She assured him of her love before passing away, never revealing his father's name. Desir understands that for a noble, having a child with a commoner is a disgrace, and Pram would have been in danger if he visited his father. Pram says he enrolled at the academy because many nobles attended, hoping to find information about his father. He got the sword appraised in town, but was told it had no value and a noble would never use it. Pram begins to cry, saying that he thought his father loved his mother, that's why left her something valuable, but the sword is worthless. He throws the sword away, vowing never to use it again. Later, they continue their training and Romantica is swirling the ball with her wind magic and manages to hit the circle. She proudly asks Desir what he thinks, happy to have mastered her skill in just 3 days. Desir says she has done well, but points out that the ball isn't in the center of the circle, so it doesn't count. This frustrates her. He approaches her closely, causing Romantica to blush in embarrassment. Desir remembers a gift Donta gave her and figures something out. Romantica shyly asks why he is staring, but he ignores her and goes to Pram, asking to see his sword again. Yet, Pram refuses, revealing he sold it. Pram takes Desir to the store where he sold the sword. As they walk through the market, Desir recalls how the market hasn't changed and looks the same as it did in his past. Pram leads him down an alleyway where the store is located. The sign outside the store states that they don't offer refunds for items sold or bought. Pram says he doesn't want to hold the sword again, but Desir smiles and asks him to give him a chance to prove something. Desir knocks on the door, and a huge man opens it, lets them in, and locks the door behind them. They meet the store owner, Wujikuin, who asks if they came to buy or sell. Desir says he wants to buy the rapier Pram sold. Wujikuin says no refunds, and Desir replies that he knows, which is why he's buying it. Wujikuin presents the sword and says he already told Pram it had no value as a sword, but something was off about it because it was too light and a rare item. Desir says it's a Kemuvin. The man asks how he knew, and Desir explains he has seen one before, recalling Donta giving a Kemuvin to Romantica. Wujikuin adds that nobility gives Kemuvin as a gift to a lover, which shocks Pram. Wujikuin says unfortunately he couldn't open it. Desir asks how much it costs, and Wujikuin says 40 silvers. Pram complains because Wujikuin bought it from him for 3 silver and didn't say it was a Kemuvin. Wujikuin explains he appraised the sword as Pram asked, and as a sword, it was worth 3 silver. But now, selling it as a Kemuvin, its value increased. Pram calls him a swindler and is about to argue more, but Desir tells him not to and agrees to pay 40 silvers for the sword. Wu Jikyun accepts, commenting he should have asked for more since Desir didn't bargain. Desir takes the sword and examines it. Wu Jikyun says he shouldn't bother because an amateur can't open the sword. Desir uses his inverse spell to analyze the sword and sees an inscription on it. He gives the sword to Pram, who is hesitant, but Desir asks him to trust him. He tells Pram to pull the groove at the hilt and draw the blade. Pram does, and he's able to draw out the blade, which shines brightly, shocking Wu Jikyun. Pram is amazed as the shining metal doesn't look like iron or silver, and says he hasn't seen anything like it. Desir explains it's because the sword is made from blancium. Wu Jikyun becomes eager and asks Desir if he's sure it's blancium. Desir affirms, explaining that blancium is a material harder than steel, but lighter than a feather, used to make the highest quality weapons. Desir is glad he got Pram the sword he used in the past. As they are about to leave, the guard blocks the door. Desir asks Wu Jikyun to remove his guard, but Wu Jikyun demands they drop the sword first. Desir refuses, reminding him that they had a deal and he paid for the Kemuvan as agreed. Wu Jikyun insists that if it's blancium, he can't let them leave with the sword. The guard approaches them, ordering them to leave the sword and go. Desir smiles as the guard's speech reminds him of a friend. When Desir refuses, the guard swings his sword at Desir, but Desir dodges it without even looking, shocking the guard. Wu Jikyun yells at the guard to handle them. The guard is stunned to see Pram taking a fighting stance. Pram tells Desir to let him handle the fight, warning the guard that he doesn't like fighting but will defend Desir if necessary. Desir smiles and teases Pram about fighting with the sword he said he wouldn't use again. Pram gets embarrassed, but Desir smiles and encourages him to show his skill. Pram confronts the guard, who grins cockily. Pram is unsure why Desir knows so much about his sword and why he's helping him, but he knows for certain he's willing to fight for Desir. Pram rushes toward the guard, who raises his sword to slash. It's a feint, and the guard goes for a punch instead. Pram predicts this, avoids the punch, and moves behind the guard. Pram charges again, and the guard swings his huge sword at him. Desir, worried, calls out to Pram. But Pram stops and places his sword in front of him. When the guard's sword makes contact, it's cut in half. Pram then uses his hilt to strike the guard under the chin, knocking him out. Desir rushes to Pram, asking if he's okay. Pram affirms and thanks Desir for letting him use his father's sword again. Desir tells him it's okay and suggests they leave. Wu Jikyun laughs, saying they aren't going anywhere because only his guard can open the heavy doors. Pram silences him by cutting the door in half with his sword, shocking Wu Jikyun. Pram and Desir leave the store, passing under the broken door. Meanwhile, Romantica is still practicing. She manages to get the ball to fly toward the circle, stopping it midway and letting it drop right at the center. Excited, she wants to show Desir, but he isn't there. She then tries to hit the circle on the wall with her wind strikes. This time, she's successful, and all her spells hit the center of the target, which she celebrates. Afterward, Romantica goes to meet Danta to give him her answer. He assumes she accepts his offer and tells her they should go meet the other Blue Moon members. Yet he's shocked when she returns the Kemuvan he gave her. She tells him she joined a party in the beta class. Donta laughs and asks if she was threatened. She denies it, saying she chose to join and, although she didn't like it at first, she's having fun now and is training to improve her skills. She asks Donta if he thinks of the commoners in the beta class as trash, which he affirms. She then reveals she used to be a commoner, which angers Donta. He says he never would have invited her to join their party if he'd known. He commends her for being honest, but she's disappointed that Desir was right about Donta. She tells him they plan to defeat the Blue Moon Party and join the Alpha class, making them enemies. Donta says he will gladly crush them. Romantica warns him not to underestimate them, as they are strong, and then she takes her leave. It's time for the qualifying round of the ranking tournament in the artificial Shadow World. Desir, Romantica, and Pram defeat every opponent with ease, climbing from the bottom rank of 110 to the top 30. The professor in charge of the Alpha class reads an article to the Blue Moon members about Desir's party ranking 30th and their potential promotion to the Alpha class. This angers him, and he says they can't let the Beta class tarnish their Alpha class reputation. He apologizes for his outburst and composes himself, stating that even though they are just first years, they must protect their pride and tradition as the Blue Moon. He insists they use any means necessary to eliminate Desir's party in the final tournament and prevent them from becoming single rankers. He asks Azist, the leader of the Blue Moon, if she can defeat Desir. She confidently affirms, and he tells her to ensure their victory. Azist, who remembers Desir as the one who gave her the first taste of defeat, is determined to beat him when they face off again. Desir decides that Pram and Romantica are ready for the next step in their training. He invites them to the library and places a pile of big books in front of them, which scares them. He explains that these are history books. Since the final round will take place in a shadow world prepared by the Academy, they need to understand historical events and incidents that might be replicated there. Pram understands that the books will help them gain the necessary historical knowledge. Romantica worries that they can't know which events will be picked, but Desir reassures her that he has chosen the most likely possibilities. Secretly, Desir already knows which shadow world they will face and reads that specific book himself. As they study, Azist approaches them, creating a tense silence that Pram doesn't understand. Romantica asks why she's there, and Azist replies that it's been a while, 2 months, actually. Desir commends her for joining the Blue Moon, calling it a great choice to join the strongest party in the Academy. However, Azist disagrees, saying they aren't the strongest because Desir isn't part of them. She states her purpose, but Desir cuts her off, saying he knows she came to declare war against him, surprising her. He adds that he understands she shows courtesy to those she considers rivals. She praises his wit, admitting she underestimated him at their first meeting, but promises to defeat him in the tournament. Desir is pleased, as he intended for Azist to view him as a rival and strive to become stronger. He looks forward to fighting alongside her in the future to change it. The day of the tournament arrives, and it's held in a huge arena. All the parties prepare to enter the shadow world as the announcer reads the rules. Donta eyes his enemy, Romantica, while Percival watches Pram. The rules allow them to fight with their powers, and anyone fatally injured will be disqualified. Anyone who contributes greatly to their party's success will be rewarded with points, and the top 9 players will receive the title of single rankers. Pram mentions that they are ranked the lowest among others, but Desir says that's why they have to succeed in clearing the Shadow World or defeating other participants to rank at the top. The Shadow World gate opens as the tournament begins, and a team walks in. Pram and Romantica seem worried, but Desir places his hands on their shoulders, assuring them it's fine and they should give their best. They agree and walk into the gate. Desir approaches the light and is transported into the artificial Shadow World. The announcer announces that their locations have been determined randomly and that they should do their best to clear the world. Desir decides to look for Pram and Romantica since they are separated. One of the participants walks in the open field, complaining about being sunburned. A wind blows, and he enjoys the breeze, not realizing it's an attack. Without seeing it, he's hit by Romantica's wind and is disqualified, leaving 27 participants. Pram starts looking around, whining that Desir is not nearby. Romantica says they are fortunate to be transported to the same place. Pram, with cute puppy eyes, asks if Desir is okay. Romantica is smitten by his cuteness, but shakes it off and focuses on finding Desir. She releases her wind around the forest, allowing her to detect 2 participants far away and another one nearby. She casts a wind spell toward the nearby participant, but it is inverted. She knows it's Desir, but they are confronted by 2 other participants. The female noble asks if she didn't know that the detection magic she cast revealed her location to them. Her male counterpart mocks them, calling them beta trash. Pram takes a sword stance, and Romantica boldly states they will teach them who the real trash is. The male noble says he will teach them the difference between classes. Romantica tells him not to be so confident. Still, before he can finish his statement, Pram closes the gap between them quickly. The noble reacts and blocks Pram's sword, getting angry and saying Pram lacks manners. He pushes Pram back, and Pram regroups with Romantica as their ambush didn't work. She admits their enemies aren't weak after all. The female noble asks if her partner is okay, but he scolds her to focus on the fight and not worry about him. Pram and the male noble start fighting, clashing swords. The female noble casts a water spell, aiming water balls at Pram, who dodges them all and runs around them at great speed, almost like a flash. The male noble slams the ground with his sword, creating dust in the area and making it impossible to see. He tells his comrade to take advantage of the diversion and blast them away using area magic. This, however, allows Romantica to detect her. Romantica blasts the female away with her wind ball, eliminating her, and then blows the dust away with her wind, mocking the male noble for revealing his location with area magic. She prepares to blast him while Pram appears behind him, telling him not to be distracted. The noble turns and swings his sword at Pram, but Pram leaps into the air to avoid it. When the noble turns back, Romantica has already aimed a wind ball at him, eliminating him. She says they got what they deserved for underestimating the beta class. The announcer declares there are now 25 participants left. Romantica yells at Désir, asking how long he plans to hide. Désir stands, smiling, saying they had everything under control, so he didn't want to interrupt. Pram is happy to see him. She asks what he thought of their fight. He says they fought well, and Romantica boasts that it's natural. Pram asks how he did, and Désir pats his head, saying he did well too, which makes Pram happy. Soon, rain clouds darken the sky, and the other participants eliminate each other until only 18 remain. Désir explains to his team that to get promoted to the Alpha class, they need to clear the Shadow World or place in the top 9. Romantica asks if clearing the Shadow World is possible. Désir says it isn't, as the other parties will gang up on them if they try. He believes finishing in the top 9 is easier because the other parties will clash with each other, and they just need to survive until 9 more are disqualified. Romantica thinks it's not as easy as he makes it sound, but Pram believes they can do it, drawing their faces on the ground, which makes Romantica chuckle and have faith in them. Suddenly, it begins to rain, so they rush under a tree for shelter. Realizing the rain won't stop soon, they decide to wait it out. They hear a clock bell ringing across the field, which the other parties also hear. Désir explains the sound is from the previous clock tower, which Romantica remembers from their studies. The announcer declares the clock tower is a high-level magical device that produces monsters at regular intervals. The clock generates electricity that shoots into the sky, causing lightning to strike the ground and reveal a monster's eyes. The announcer announces a survival quest. The clock tower has produced monsters, and participants must survive against them. The Alpha class professor laughs as he watches in the system room, saying the Beta class is finished. Bridget becomes worried about Désir's party, which is still under the tree. Suddenly, Désir's party hears a scream, and the announcer says one person has been eliminated, leaving 17 participants. Désir tells Romantica and Pram to stay under the tree. He walks out of the shade, but they are hit with an offensive smell and have to cover their noses. The ground quakes, and a rat monster emerges, scaring Romantica and Pram, who rush to hug Désir. The rat monster roars loudly. Désir immediately tells them to run, and they obey, picking up their pace as they are chased by a pack of rats. Désir knows the rat monster is called Kildra Mouse, a monster that uses battalions of mice as limbs and has a staple diet of human blood. It never gives up once it sets its sights on a target. They continue running as they are being chased. Romantica asks how to defeat the rats. Désir explains they need to defeat the commander hiding among the pack. Romantica thinks it's impossible, but Désir insists it can be done. He stops running, bites his finger, and draws blood, which he throws into the air. The rat leader smells it and jumps out to eat. Désir orders Romantica to attack, and she hits it with a wind ball, knocking it down. The rat stands again, scaring her. Désir explains that the rat is a monster with high magic resistance. As the rats start running towards them, Désir decides they should retreat and regroup, but Pram runs past him into the pack of rats to find the commander. Pram calls out, but is already deep inside the swarm. Determined, he searches for the commander while dodging attacking rats. He senses the commander and reaches for it. Outside, Désir digs through the pack, trying to reach Pram. Romantica offers to blast the rats away, but Désir says she might hit Pram. Desperate, he recalls Pram's lifeless body from the past. Suddenly, Pram jumps out of the pack with the leader and quickly slays the commander with his sword. The announcer declares that they have successfully defeated the monster, ending the survival quest. Pram lands safely but collapses. Désir rushes to catch him, and Romantica tells Pram not to push himself, which he agrees to, saying he's tired. Désir smiles and tells him to get some rest. Pram immediately falls asleep. Désir carries Pram under the tree. Romantica says Pram is amazing for going into the pack despite being scared of rats. Désir asks her to watch Pram and walks away. Standing in the rain, Désir punches himself, leaving a bruise. He berates himself for not stopping the monster without involving Pram and reminds himself of why he came back, to avoid losing his friends again. He returns to Romantica and Pram. Romantica asks what happened to his face, but Désir says it's nothing. Pram wakes up, regaining his energy, and asks Désir about his face. Désir assures him he's fine. He asks if Pram can walk, which he affirms. Désir tells them they need to move to the previous clock tower. Clenching his fist, Désir promises not to make the same mistake again and to take the perfect route to reach his goal. The Blue Moon team makes it to the previous clock tower. Donta and Percival boast about how conquering the tower will be easy, and then they can win. Suddenly, breezes blow around them, and they are attacked by multiple flying wind balls. Azist quickly shields herself with an ice wall. Percival blocks the attack with his sword, and Donta uses his shield. However, 2 other Blue Moon members take direct hits and are eliminated immediately. They realize this is an enemy attack, and Azist already knows the enemy is Désir. With that attack, only 15 participants are left. Azist and her teammates begin running up the clock tower stairs, but Romantica keeps firing wind balls. Azist can detect the attacks and directs Donta on where to block with his shield, but the attack is so strong that it hits the stairs, causing them to fall off. One of the balls is about to hit Azist from behind, but she senses it and blocks it with her ice wall. Romantica apologizes to Désir, saying her attacks were blocked and now their position is compromised. Désir says it's to be expected since Azist is with them. He tells Romantica to aim for the other party heading to the clock tower. Romantica worries that all the parties will gather and gang up against them, but Désir smiles. She yells at him to explain, and he says it's okay because their gathering is part of his plan. He tells her to trust him. Romantica eliminates 2 participants heading towards the tower, leaving 13 participants. Désir proceeds to cast an inverse spell on the clock tower. The Blue Moon members open the door to the clock tower, and Azist is shocked to find other parties already inside, ready to attack each other. Gabriel, one of the leaders of another party, accuses the Blue Moon of attacking them, which the other party members confirm, saying they were ambushed as well. Gabriel criticizes them for such tactics, calling it a low move for the top party at the academy. Donta tries to explain it's a misunderstanding. Gabriel insists it must be the Blue Moon because they're the only ones skilled enough to use the high-level spells used in the attacks. Azist knows they won't listen if she blames a beta and realizes this is what Désir wanted. Gabriel takes her silence as confirmation and prepares to attack her. Azist tells her teammates not to engage as she steps forward to confront Gabriel. Gabriel attacks with fire, engulfing where Azist stood. One of Gabriel's teammates celebrates prematurely, but Azist reappears behind him, kicking him away and then using her ice spell to trap a female member of Gabriel's team. With only 1 member left, Gabriel calls for assistance from the other party, proposing they can all be single rankers if they defeat the Blue Moon. The other party agrees, and they all launch attacks at Azist. Azist fights back, slashing arrows fired at her and countering Gabriel's fire with her ice balls. The fight intensifies until, above them, Désir and his comrades listen to the battle. But suddenly, it stops. Romantica believes their plan worked, but Désir disagrees, noting there was no announcement. Meanwhile, Azist and her team reach the top of the stairs. She commends Désir for his clever plan, but he admits he had hoped the Alphas would fight among themselves and thin their ranks. Azist clarifies she didn't defeat them, but merely immobilized them. Désir reflects that their plan would have succeeded if the Alphas had defeated each other. Azist dismisses it as a pitiful plan. Donta faces Romantica, Percival faces Pram, and Azist confronts Désir, challenging him to prove his worth for the title of single ranker by facing her. She surprises him by casting a magic circle under him, creating an ice column that launches him and herself to the floor above. This worries Romantica and Pram about Désir's safety. Percival advises Pram not to take his eyes off his opponent as he launches at Pram, while Donta blocks Romantica's attempts to reach Pram, insisting they have their own battles to fight and he will ensure they defeat her party. Azist approaches Désir, who is collapsed on the floor. She urges him to get up, knowing he wasn't taken out by the attack. Désir retaliates by casting a stone break spell, tossing stones at her. Azist dodges most of them, but 1 stone transforms into a snake, poised to bite her. She quickly freezes and shatters it. Désir activates his inversing spell on the tower, reversing Azist's ice column. Meanwhile, below them, Percival clashes swords with Pram, who fights back fiercely. Percival nods Pram's head, causing him to stumble back. He asks Pram why he's not using the huge sword from before. Pram doesn't answer, which annoys Percival, who swings his sword at Pram. However, Pram swiftly moves behind him. Percival attacks multiple times, but Pram dodges effortlessly and counters, even piercing Percival's cape. Percival is confused and realizes Pram has become stronger and faster since their last fight. Pram kicks him in the abdomen, knocking him down. Percival demands to know how Pram got so strong in such a short time, but Pram refuses to explain, sticking his tongue out at Percival. Frustrated, Percival stands to continue the fight and wonders what Donta is doing. Donta is locked in combat with Romantica, blocking all her wind balls with his sword. He mocks Romantica, calling her just a level 2 mage, and predicts her defeat. Romantica, low on mana, strategizes on how to take down Donta. Suddenly, the ice column shatters, releasing a thick fog that obscures their visibility. Donta waits cautiously, trying to sense where Romantica will attack from. He's hit in the hand by a wind bullet, and as he blocks the next attack, he realizes Romantica is using the wind to locate him. Romantica runs around him, hoping to finish the fight while the fog lasts, but Donta activates a necklace, causing it to shine and dispel the fog in their vicinity. Romantica sees Donta charging at her and swiftly dodges his sword swing, which hits the wall. She rolls on the ground to evade his subsequent attacks. Getting up quickly, she realizes the necklace is an artifact, and remembers it was something Donta wanted to give her before. Donta boasts that Romantica is not fit to wear the necklace as she is a mere commoner. Romantica rebuts, telling him they're all students and humans, regardless of the Academy's attempts to segregate them. This angers Donta, who vehemently denies that nobles and commoners are alike. Romantica challenges him, asking what truly sets them apart. Donta erupts, yelling that everything about them is different, from birth onwards, and demands she stop speaking nonsense. Donta recalls some childhood trauma, further fueling his belief in their inherent differences. Romantica, observing this, realizes Donta may be unstable. Donta then uses a ring on his finger to cast a fire circle beneath Romantica. She leaps away but lands on another trap. She tries to counter with her wind magic, but Donta overwhelms her with a blast into the ceiling. Seeing Romantica in trouble, Pram rushes to her aid. She assures him she blocked the attack from causing serious harm. Donta commands Percival to stand down, declaring he will be the one to defeat the commoners. Romantica instructs Pram to handle Donta while she recovers her energy. Pram prepares to face Donta, who charges at him aggressively. Donta uses his ring to cast a stone break spell, summoning rocks to crush Pram from both sides. Romantica calls out to Pram, fearing for his safety. Despite being trapped, Pram manages to slice through the rocks and launch himself towards Donta, catching him off guard. Donta dodges his attack and tries to kick PR, but he dodges it. Percival tells Donta that Pram saw his prey tea, but Donta silences him, claiming he'll handle it alone. Pram realizes Donta has tunnel vision and is solely focused on Romantica, which he is able to capitalize on it. But Romantica realizes that she's slowing Pram down as he is trying to protect her in her weakened state. She tells him to lure Percival away while she handles Donta, but Pram can see that she's lying. Pram reminds her that they are going to make the single rankers as a team and reminds her what Desir said about them being stronger together and refuses to leave her side. Romantica is touched by Pram's dedication and thanks him for his wisdom. Motivated by Pram's words, she resolves to fight alongside him. In the ongoing battle, Azist continues to clash with Desir. She launches a roll of icicles towards him, but he easily shatters them with his inverse spell. Trying a different tactic, Azist runs through the air on a magic circle platform towards him, but Desir snaps his fingers, shattering her approach. She regains her balance and casts an ice spell from behind, but Desir effortlessly shatters both the ice spell and her magic circle with another snap of his fingers. Next, Desir launches a fire spear at Azist, who manages to dodge it but lands on another fire spear emerging from the ground. Surprisingly, Azist protects herself with an ice barrier spell, which Desir admires before it crumbles. He compliments her for not getting injured. In the midst of their duel, Azist questions why she's better in both magic and combat skills but struggling against Desir. Smiling, Desir tells her to learn to enjoy the fight. Determined, Azist tightens her grip on her sword, realizing she lacks battle experience. She charges at Desir, who anticipates her move and shoots fireballs at her, all of which she dodges. Azist leaps into the air, preparing to strike, but Desir pulls out a knife and casts a strength spell on himself, blocking her sword. Shocked, Azist learns he can handle a sword. She swings harder, sending Desir flying into the wall, amazed at her strength. As Desir recovers, Azist charges at him again, swinging relentlessly. He dodges some strikes and blocks others with his blade. Azist demands to know why she can't defeat him despite her strength. They both step back, and Desir smiles, asking her if she's having fun. He explains that despite her power, she hasn't found a worthy opponent, which could make the battle enjoyable for her. Desir understands Azist's feelings, knowing she used to be bored because her opponents were never challenging enough. He asks her how it feels not to be able to defeat her opponent easily and whether she enjoys the challenge of having to give her all to win. Azist declares she doesn't understand fun, but admits she's determined to defeat Desir. Smiling, Desir eagerly accepts her challenge. Azist unleashes her vision magic, transforming the surroundings into a frozen castle. She positions herself on a frozen throne and asks Desir if he's ready. He prepares himself as the floor begins sprouting ice icicles, which he skillfully avoids. Soon, he finds himself trapped as magic circles appear in the air, and Azist uses them to launch a barrage of ice bullets at him. Desir counters with his inverse spell, shielding himself and destroying the ice bullets. He realizes Azist can use her magic freely within this frozen castle, a trump card she's employed in battles before. Desir disperses the magic circles with his inverse spell, but Azist quickly recreates them and continues her assault. He's impressed by her ability to wield such powerful spells but remains unfazed. Desir systematically undoes the ice columns around him, confident that none of Azist's attacks can reach him now. Azist is unsure how to proceed as Desir counters all her spells with his inverse magic. She realizes her magic and sword alone aren't enough to defeat him. Determined, Azist retrieves her sword from the ground and begins undoing the frozen castle. She channels all her power into her sword, transforming it into an ice magic sword. Desir smiles, recognizing her improvement. In the battle below, Dante continues his fight with Pram, swinging his sword aggressively. Pram blocks his attacks and retaliates with a kick to Dante's abdomen, sending him crashing into the wall where Percival is resting. Romantica checks on Pram's condition, and he confirms he's okay but acknowledges Dante's formidable strength. Romantica insists they must defeat Dante before Percival joins the fight. Dante stands up confidently, cracks his neck, and surprises Pram and Romantica by inviting Percival to join the fight. Percival eagerly accepts, grabbing his sword and charging at them. He throws his sword towards Pram, who swiftly deflects it into the air. Meanwhile, Dante sneaks behind Romantica to attack her, and Percival charges directly at Pram. Pram struggles to defend against both opponents at once. Remembering Desir's teachings, Romantica gathers her courage. She tells Pram to duck, then stretches out her arms and casts a magic circle aimed at their opponents' faces, declaring checkmate as she blasts them away. Meanwhile, Desir smiles proudly as he sees Azist wielding her magic sword. This ability is usually mastered only by magic knights after years of training, but he's impressed that Azist has already mastered it. Azist charges at Desir, who tries to counter with a stone break spell, but she swings her sword, turning the rocks into ice crystals that shatter. He launches a fire spell, but Azist swings her sword again, extinguishing the flames. She confidently states that Desir can't reverse her powers now. Azist charges at Desir with her sword, and he prepares to block with his knife. However, she skillfully slices his knife in half and places her sword at his neck, smiling in anticipation of her victory. Just as she is about to declare her win, Azist notices Desir casting an inverse spell with a smile on his face, but she can't figure out what he's trying to reverse. Looking up, Azist realizes Desir's inverse spell is targeting the clock tower. It envelops the tower all the way to the top, reversing its functions. The announcer declares that the quest is cleared as the previous clock tower has been deactivated, marking the end of the final round of the ranking tournament. Desir breathes a sigh of relief. Back in the arena, the quest's completion is announced, and Desir is celebrated as the one who conquered the tower, sparking cheers from the crowd. In the system room, the Alpha class professor is furious that Desir won, while Bridget claps happily. The professor refuses to accept the result, believing Bridget must have done something illegal. Another professor agrees, questioning how a commoner could defeat a magic knight and clear the shadow world. After the meeting, Bridget meets with Desir and his friends, congratulating them on their victory. Eagerly, they ask what the final decision was. But first, Bridget surprises them by summoning a large cake to celebrate. Romantica and Pram are thrilled to see the cake, with Romantica mentioning it's a rare treat from a special bakery. Bridget teases them that they didn't pass, wiping her eyes with a handkerchief, but then reveals she was joking they actually passed. They all breathe a sigh of relief. Bridget announces that they are now officially promoted to the Alpha class and given the title of single rankers. Romantica and Pram shout with joy, urged by Bridget to eat to their heart's content as they celebrate. Desir thanks her, but Bridget insists he did all the hard work, especially outsmarting the stubborn Alpha class professor. They all smile as they enjoy the cake, and Bridget looks at Desir with pride, remembering how he smiled when he was younger, glad to see how much he's grown. Romantica and Pram are awestruck as they enter the Alpha class area, marveling at its grandeur. They wear shiny new uniforms, and Desir, always smiling, informs them they have morning practice. Aziz decides to join their club, and Desir takes on the task of training her. He pairs her up with Pram, who moves around her like lightning, attacking from all angles. Romantica isn't thrilled about Aziz joining their group, but Desir insists she teaches Aziz how to perfectly place the ball into the circle. Everything soon returns to normal routine. Desir and his friends approach Professor Prelude, requesting a favor as she prepares to leave her class. She asks what they need, and they speak privately in a room. Desir explains that their group needs support, but Professor Prelude mentions that the deadline for the Academy and Magical Tower support has passed. Desir tells her there's another way she can help. Professor Prelude accompanies Desir to the headquarters of the Magical Tower, fulfilling his request to play chess with the tower's master. She smiles, calling him a peculiar one, but finds it equally strange that the tower's master, Zod, accepted Desir's request. She opens the door for him and wishes him luck, reminding him to behave. Inside, Desir is pleasantly surprised to find that the master of the Magical Tower is Zod, whom he knows as the strongest mage there and his closest friend from his past life. Zod asks why Desir seems so cheerful, and Desir nervously replies that he's just nervous. Zod gestures for Desir to take a seat and begins setting up the chess game. He mentions he has a meeting soon, so they have exactly 27 minutes for the game. He asks if Desir has any specific rules he prefers, and Desir requests to play using the Urbit method. Zod is impressed, as not many people know this method, but he accepts. With a snap of his fingers, the chessboard expands and some of the pieces change. Desir explains that a good friend taught him the game, recalling the times they spent together playing chess. They start playing, and Zod praises Desir's skill, but notes he still has much to learn as he captures one of Desir's pieces. Desir suggests a wager. The loser grants the winner a request. However, Zod explains that as a student, Desir cannot offer him a wish. Undeterred, Desir notices a magical crystal on Zod's table and asks to see it. Zod agrees, and when Desir holds the crystal, it begins to glow, surprising Zod. Desir hands it back and says the crystal's reaction will be his wager. Intrigued, Zod asks what Desir wishes for when he wins. Desir smiles confidently and replies that he'll reveal his wish when he wins, to which Zod agrees, and they continue their game. Desir returns to Romantica and Pram, congratulating them on completing their mission and recovering an important artifact. Romantica doesn't boast about the mission, admitting the enemies were tough to defeat. She asks Desir to train them to become stronger. Pram wonders why Desir had been training them so intensely. Desir reveals a dire truth. In 13 days, a shadow world will appear, different from the simulations they faced at the Academy. Failure means the world's doom and their deaths, shocking Romantica and Pram. Desir assures them he won't let anyone die. Romantica believes Desir because everything he predicted always came to pass. She still thinks he's a mysterious person who is strong beyond his current status. She asks who he really is. Desir considers telling them, but Romantica stops him, reminding him of her promise to figure out his secret on her own. Desir insists on telling her, but she covers her ears so she won't hear him. Pram states that he also trusts in Desir, which brings a smile to Desir's face. Desir emphasizes the need for all of them, including himself, to become stronger for the battles ahead, which they agree to. Desir begins their training. He shows Romantica how to compress a bottle into a small ball with magic. Pram receives swordsmanship training, aiming to remove a brooch from his mentor's shoulder. Aziz joins the training, learning how to make solid objects from paper. Romantica succeeds in compressing the bottle after many tries, while Aziz manages to create a sturdy paper cup and jug. Pram eventually succeeds in removing the brooch after numerous attempts. Desir also helps Romantica increase her magic level. Amidst this, Aziz distances herself from her Blue Moon teammates. 13 days later, the Academy was alerted about the Shadow World's imminent appearance, and all students were asked to gather at the auditorium. Desir and his comrades, dressed in combat uniforms, approach the teleportation zone. Aziz joins them, and Romantica acknowledges Desir's decision to let Aziz join their team. Desir feels confident that with his comrades gathered, he can ensure everyone survives this ordeal. He asks if they're ready, receiving affirmations from his comrades. They are teleported to the Shadow World, with Desir determined to save the world this time. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.